Welcome to Puerto Rico and welcome to the brand new 2026 Honda Passport, and specifically today we're going off-road in the new Trail Sport version. To make this Passport more capable off-road, Honda has done a few things to make it more rugged, and one of the most important is the tires. We've got General Grabber all-terrain tires, pretty aggressive for a factory tire on an SUV in this class, and an 18-inch wheel. There's a few different colors on the exterior that you can get here, as well as a few different wheel designs. This one does have a pretty sharp HPD branded white 18-inch wheel that might get a little dirty, especially with brake dust, but could be a worthwhile sacrifice if you like the look of it as much as I do. For ground clearance, we've got 8.3 inches that Honda claims, which is maybe one of the low points here as far as its capability. When you do run out of that ground clearance, this does come from the factory with a few steel skid plates underneath, but there's other accessory skid plates and rock sliders that you can get to bolster this even further. And then one of the best things that this Passport has going for it when it's going off-road is an updated IVTM4 all-wheel drive system. This is an all-wheel drive system that we've spent quite a bit of time with. This all-wheel drive system can send up to 70% of the power to the rear end and 100% of that power to either wheel, making it surprisingly capable. Up front, we also have a very accessible set of orange recovery points. These are easy to get to and easy to identify, and they've had to do some pretty creative engineering to make this also conform with crash safety standards, but that's just a nice piece to see. Aside from the factory pieces that you get standard, like some of these steel skid plates, you can also get a pretty sturdy rock slider. This is a big piece with an aluminum plate over top that can be replaced because there's this exposed hardware, which could get hung up on rocks, but still a pretty nice looking piece and something that you can add as an accessory. It's also available for you to put a full-size spare into the trunk of the car if that's a sacrifice that you want to make, because compared to the compact, it is going to eat up some of your cargo volume. However, if you're going off-road very often, we definitely always like to have a full-size spare as an option. We are beginning our first portion of the off-road obstacles that we have to drive over here in the Passport, and really one of the big limitations with this vehicle is going to be ground clearance. Naturally, they've selected and even constructed this course such that it shouldn't be too much of a limiting factor today, but as we can hear, there are some skid plates underneath. Even when you do run out of ground clearance, you've got skid plates underneath, so it's not too big of a deal. And we're coming up on a articulated section, carrying a little bit of momentum. Not too bad. Definitely with the independent suspension on this vehicle, articulation is not going to be one of its high points compared to a Wrangler or a 4Runner or a Bronco, something like that. This is primarily a street-tuned suspension. It's a multi-link rear and a McPherson strut in the front. But the all-wheel drive system on these vehicles does a lot to cope even when you start to lift tires. Of course, we don't have a low-range gear set in this vehicle, which is also going to be a limiting factor. This is a 10-speed transmission, so there's still a lot of ratios to choose from, but typically, even in trail mode, this vehicle is going to start out in second gear, so on some of the steeper climbs, we'll manually shift it down into first. So we do have a couple different views on our camera system here in the Trail Sport. With the end of the wiper stock here, I can switch between this view that shows me the tires and a view straight out the front. And through some of the narrow sections, they recommend being able to see these side views, which is a nice thing to have because visibility out the front of the vehicle is limited by the hood bulge here. And that's not uncommon with a lot of modern vehicles that have boxy front ends like this Passport, but it is something to keep in mind. We don't usually like to depend on these camera systems, but when you have a vehicle that limits your view out of the windshield like we have here, the camera systems can come in handy. You can definitely feel here in the Passport, even on this Trail Sport model, it is primarily a suspension system that's designed to work on the road, so it's a little bit stiff when you have some momentum moving over an uneven surface like what we've got here. and definitely compromised when it comes to articulation and any serious off-roading, but that's all kind of to be expected realistically for a vehicle that's in this class and most people's use case. Under the hood, we have a bit of a dying breed. This is a naturally aspirated 3.5 liter V6 paired to a 10-speed automatic transmission that runs through that IVTM4 all-wheel drive system, 285 horsepower and 262 pound-feet of torque. Regardless of which Passport model you get, they all come pretty heavily equipped. This one is a Trail Sport Elite, so this is the very top trim that you can buy, and you can tell that it's a Trail Sport Elite because we have a heated steering wheel, we have heated and ventilated seats up front here, but a lot of the features that you get in these cars are very standard. In front of me, I have a 10.2-inch digital screen, and then in the center of the dash, a huge 12.3-inch screen that has Google integration, as well as, of course, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. We've also got a wireless phone charger here, and some pretty cool design and materials. Passport is laid into the dash there, actually physically, so it's got a texture to it. Around the wireless charger, we have a topographical map, which has got a cool design, but otherwise it's a lot of what we expect from a Honda interior. We've got nice hard buttons for our climate control, something that we always like to see in modern cars when a lot of them are going away from that. All of your touch points feel very good, the materials are good, and these seats are good. We've also got a pretty large moonroof above us in this very highly spec'd vehicle. This car also has a premium Bose 12-speaker audio system. Here in the interior, there are also a few design details to point to the Trail Sport trim. We've got it embroidered here into the headrest. We've got some orange stitching, and then a pretty unique Trail Sport floor mat as well. Around back in the new Passport, we have a pretty decent amount of space. I'm not the biggest guy at the office. I'm about 5'10", but plenty of headroom, plenty of legroom as well, and a few pretty nice features. We've got heated seats back here on this Trail Sport Elite. We've got our own climate controls in addition to our own climate vents. We have a good amount of power that we can tap into, a couple USB-Cs, as well as a 150-watt outlet here in the back. So all pretty nice things to have. And again, a feature of the Trail Sport Elite are, as Tommy calls them, the peasant blockers. Though the pitch of the hill that I'm coming up right now, it's never going to show on a GoPro how steep it is. I do have pitch and roll gauges as well as a compass, my elevation, and a few different things here in my center cluster. When I'm in trail mode as I am now, I am in my manual shift mode locked into first gear, which is giving me a little bit better of a ratio to go uphill in, considering once again that I don't actually have a low range gear set here, and especially steep as we come up and crest. Through my windshield, because of this boxy hood, I'm not able to see actually the ground that I'm cresting over, so I am using the camera views to my advantage to help compensate for that a little bit. Now, Honda is doing the launch for this Passport, as I mentioned, in Puerto Rico. It's a pretty spectacular location, to be honest. We get to travel a lot for this job, and this is definitely a highlight place to be at. Very different kind of terrain than what we typically get in Colorado. Once we get one of these Passports back home, we'll be able to pick out some more trails to bring these on, maybe even ramp up the intensity a little bit, because we know that these Passports are capable of some pretty decent trail running. We got to drive one of the prototype Passports in Moab when it was still camouflaged, so we know that this can do some degree of rock crawling, and it's something that we're definitely excited to explore a little bit more. We'll be sure to do some more rock crawling when we get one back in Colorado on some of our local trails that we use to benchmark a lot of vehicles. Now, we're driving over some rocks at the moment. I don't want to scuff these very pretty wheels because I'm sure they're also expensive, so I have my side camera views, and that was a little bit of skid plate. At times I'm a little surprised by how little it takes to end up bumping into the skid plate when we're taking these off-road. Again, one of those limitations in this vehicle off-road is that 8.3 inches of ground clearance, but that's why they've given it skid plates, and that's why there's also some accessory pieces like we showed. Were there any doubt what vehicle you're in, it's printed, stamped even, into the back of the tailgate in white to match the wheels. Pretty cool. Power tailgate, and opening up to the rear, we've got a couple things that we can check out. So this up top, this is what turns into the table. Yeah, the table is back. So if you're a fan of the first gen CR-V and you remember those having a table, this can be taken out. Underneath here In the cargo floor, there's a couple legs that you screw onto the table so that you can set it up if you're out having a picnic or camping. But as far as cargo volume, we've got 44 cubic feet behind the second row. If you fold the second row down, 83.5 cubic feet of space. And we've got a few other features as well here. We've got another 150 watt outlet, which is also a nice thing to have. These new Passports can also tow as much as 5,000 pounds. So in the back here, we have our hitch receiver, we have our 7-pin connector as well. And then if you're walking away from the back of the Passport, you can press this button in the trunk and walk away from it, and it'll close after you step to the side. Now, styling, of course, is always very subjective, but I don't think it's controversial to say that this new Passport has a nice square-jawed look to it, especially from the front end. So it says Passport here, stamped in under the Honda logo. This being a TrailSport, we do have a TrailSport badge as well. And then this at the front of the hood is not actually a functional air intake. We've got some plastic cladding, of course the white wheels and the knobby tires. And around the rear we have a bumper with more cladding and generally a pretty old school boxy 4x4 shape. So right now I have my hill descent control kicked on, and it's a really easy system to set. So if I apply some brake and slow down to 1 mile per hour, for example, then it will maintain me at that speed. If I want to go a little quicker, I can apply just a little bit of throttle, and it will speed up to that speed and just maintain whatever speed I was at when I either let off of the brake or applied throttle and then let off of the throttle. So it's a really easy system to use, easy enough that even though I don't typically care much to use hill descent control, this system I would potentially actually take advantage of. All things considered, Honda is going in a pretty neat direction with this Passport TrailSport, leaning into the more rugged side of things, and that's something that I've personally wanted to see from them for a long time because I'm very familiar with a lot of Honda's powersport products, like their motorcycles and their side-by-sides, and seeing them do more of that on the automotive side of things is pretty cool. Now this is, of course, like we said, still not a Wrangler or Bronco competitor, but it is genuinely a vehicle that you could bring out to some trails and have a good time with, and certainly reach the vast majority of trail. Now we've got another steep climb, and I will say our conditions here are a little muddy. It's not what we typically get back in Colorado. If anything there, we're gonna see more silt and more rock, although nothing too extreme as far as mud goes. It's relatively dry, this hill, at the moment. And these general grabbers so far, traction has been good. We haven't done anything so far that I would say is a massive challenge for grip, but I am pretty happy with the tire choice on this from the factory. I think it's a good aggressive tire, a good looking tire, and one that's gonna work in a lot of different conditions, including what we're doing right now. Pricing on the Passport starts in the RTO, the base model, at $46,000 including destination, $46,200 to be exact. But if you opt for one of the more spec'd out TrailSport versions like this TrailSport Elite, you can very easily get into the mid $50,000 range. So it's not an inexpensive vehicle, but even the base model RTL is pretty well equipped. They come with a lot of standard features. So pros and cons there. Any Passport that you get is gonna come with a lot of content in it, but none of them are going to be super affordable, and to some degree that is kind of the world that we live in now. So let me know what you all think down in the comments below. That's all for this video, and we'll see you in the next.